Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for taking some time with us today to meet with our finalists for the Vice President for Information Technology and our Chief Information Officer. I'm Paige Borden, the Associate Provost and Chief Analytics Officer, and I'll be helping to facilitate the session today. The Vice President for Information Technology and CIO is a key member of the university's leadership team to provide executive leadership and strategic vision for the institution's information technology infrastructure, assets, and services. This executive will work collaboratively with the university community, including faculty and staff members and university leaders, to leverage technological innovations to support research and instruction, while also improving administrative systems and business processes. This session is open to the campus community, including faculty, staff, and students, and we're using a Zoom webinar to facilitate the conversation. This session is meant to give you an opportunity to get to know Fred, ask questions, and provide feedback to President Cartwright. To ask questions, please use the Q&A feature, which also allows others to vote if they would like to see a similar question asked, and I'll help to facilitate that Q&A. Before we open the floor to questions, I have prepared several of my own to make sure that we extend to every candidate. Today's finalist is Fred Sudler. Fred currently serves as the Associate Vice President and Associate Chief Information Officer at Michigan State University. Fred, thank you so much for joining us again today.
Thank you, Paige. I appreciate it. Hope you're doing well.
Yes, I am. Thank you. First of all, for those of you who were chiming in at 3 o'clock, it was not a technical difficulty. It was because our conversations with Fred have been so engaging that we were just running a little long for the day. So we apologize. We're going to extend this session by 5 extra minutes to make sure that we get the same 45 quality minutes we've had with the other candidates. And let me go ahead and just kick us off, Fred. Start us off with the first question that I have for you.
Okay.
So we're very excited about your candidacy and eager to learn some more about you. So by way of introduction, will you please take a few minutes to tell us about yourself and why at this point in your career you're interested in becoming the Vice President for Information Technology and CIO here at UCF?
Well, thank you for the question, Paige, and thank everyone for the hospitality I received today. It's been a good day, a long day, but a very good day, and I've learned a lot about UCF. I obviously being a Floridian, I moved to Florida in the early 1980s, so I knew a lot about UCF to begin with. I'm a product of the State University System of Florida. I'm a first generation graduate. I went to school at UNF for both undergraduate and graduate school. My son actually is a senior there at UCF, so I'm also a shareholder of the university. So I'm interested as a parent to kind of see how my night dollars are being spent, and I'm really happy with what I'm seeing from his maturation and the education that he's receiving there. I'm getting exactly what I expected. So as Paige said, I am the Associate Vice President and Associate CIO at Michigan State. I've been in Michigan. I left the state about 10 winters ago, and I've been here in Michigan. Actually, I've had an opportunity to really gain a lot of experience at an R1 and a very complex institution. I manage the day-to-day of an IT organization that has about somewhere between 600 to 800 people in it. My portfolio has changed over time. I started off doing a lot of operational work, managing the enterprise systems team, and that's where we do things like ERP integrations. We moved from a couple since I've been here. I did one at UNF going back in time, where we went from mainframe to Banner as an ERP, and then here we went from mainframe to Koali Finance and SAP HCM. We are what's known as a best of breed university, which means we bought applications based upon their particular use and how they fit the need at the time. Now, what that means is we have to do a lot of heavy integration on the back end to make all of these applications work in sync. We run about, there's about 500 or 600 applications in our portfolio. We run about 3,500 batch jobs a night to keep all that data in sync. We're now into our third ERP implementation, where we're going to be moving our student system from an IDMS mainframe system to PeopleSoft. And there's a long story there. We, because we are best of breed, we have customizations on top of customizations. And it would really be difficult for us to move from mainframe through client server all the way to a cloud environment. It would have been too disruptive for our campus. So we're kind of making that intermediary hop where we're could come up on PeopleSoft Student, retire the mainframe, and then start our planning towards getting towards a cloud solution, probably Oracle or Workday. I mean, those are the ones that are out there in the space. We need some time for those, for that student product to mature a little bit more before it could take on the characteristics that we need from it. Prior to here, I worked there at University of North Florida for several years. I was fortunate enough to be able to start off in a college of business. So I worked within a decentralized unit for a good 10 years before I was tapped to take over the director of university systems role, where I moved into central IT. So I'm at that rare point where I've spent about 25% of my time of my 25 years in higher ed in a decentralized unit, and then the rest of the time running central IT. Before that, I worked at Price Waterhouse back in the mid 80s, installing corporate networks there in Florida. So I was responsible for installing token ring networks back in the day, and setting up PBXs and kind of running the first versions of what were CRMs in those days, Lotus Notes and the like. And before that, I was proud to serve in the United States Navy, go Veterans Day, and I was stationed up in Mayport, Florida, aboard a guided missile destroyer. So that's my varied history. And you know, why UCF? I think was the second part of that. I think, Paige.
Correct.
So there's kind of two dimensions there. There's the personal, and then there's professional. On the personal side, you kind of get to a point, an inflection point in your career where you try to figure out what's the best use of your 24-hour day. I'm at that stage now in my 50-something age of life where you begin to figure out, okay, what do you want to do, and where's your greatest impact? I can certainly continue on in the path of being a CIO in the Big Ten and an R1, or I can kind of follow my passions, which are support, making sure that I still get to engage with faculty, students, and staff, and problem solve, and still have a hand in strategy and kind of future and horizon thinking. That seems to be where I'm kind of trending towards. On the professional side, UCF offers those two things in spades. You're on that journey of going from good to great. And during the next 10 years, you know, a lot of what you're going to be going through is what I've just gone through. So from a professional standpoint, I think I have a lot to offer on that maturation process. I also think that from a values perspective of what it means to a first generation kid to be able to be transformed by education is my story. And I think that aligns to the UCF story as well. So there's several things that really attract me to this role. I like the tech emphasis of where the university is right now. So it gives me a chance to kind of geek out with respect to what I know you're going to be doing in like the engineering space. And you're almost really poised to be, I think, the Silicon Valley of the Sun Belt, as it were, as you kind of look at the people that and industry that are moving into Central Florida. So it's a great time, I think, to be a part of the what will be the emerging UCF story. And I look forward to possibly playing a role in that.
Well, thank you for sharing those details with us. I have to admit, I'm going to go back to something you started with and say that I love the way you described your time in Michigan in winters. And of course, you know, you do that opposite here in Florida, where you describe your time in summers, perhaps, but we could use just a little more winter right now. I think it's time for it to cool off for us too. Next question. Could you please describe your vision for how information technology contributes to creating a state-of-the-art research, teaching, and learning environment at a complex major research university? And how would you position UCF to distinguish itself in this area?
Sure. So we're in that interesting time right now, aren't we, as a higher ed industry, where we're the pandemic was one thing, but I think we were already in this phase of kind of transforming ourselves from just kind of the traditional chalk and talk environment to really becoming a public-private partner in the research space, kind of redefining where and how we approach pedagogy with respect to is everyone from our local region? Does everyone come through our local high schools? Right now, like what you have there, you have a heavy emphasis on transfer articulation, right? So who gets to transfer in, and what sort of quality experience can we create for each one of these folks that come into the university environment? How are we able to come up with, I call it the kind of the Amazon approach of education. How are we able to create unique experiences for each of our students, faculty, staff, and researchers, right? Because as you look at these various personas, each one of these groups are looking for something special and something unique and different about what they bring to the collective of our campus environment. The researcher, for instance, as we start looking at that Silicon Valley space that I talk about, how are we going to be able to support and enable research productivity while still also recognizing that we have a teaching component? IT is kind of an underpinning there. I think we enable that interaction both for the faculty and student, and for the researcher and the broader campus community and broader world community. IT's right there at the center. We're on the path to success for everything that passes through the campus environment. So we've got to be nimble. We've got to be able to transform our culture. We're looking forward to being part of the partnership that we know exists in all of those walks of life across campus. And I can go deeper into that, but I don't want to filibuster our time. That's my soapbox part. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We know we do have a hard stop by about 3:50, but the next question has to do with customer service. So have you, what is your customer service philosophy? What metrics do you use to currently use to measure the success of your IT organization along the lines of customer service? So
customer service is something that IT is adopting. We've always had a service portfolio. The new way of thinking is how do we provide the services that people want as opposed to what we want to provide? So that means that we're having to kind of re-engage the campus community to make sure that we're measuring what it is that we do, and it's being consumed in a way that provides value to the campus community. So I'm constantly looking at things. The metrics that I look at are, the satisfaction metrics. How satisfied are customers with what it is that we said we were going to do, and did we in fact do it? I pay particular attention to that. Not so much as the volume that passes through, but it's more qualitative measures that we're kind of going for these days. And that requires a different kind of remaking, if you will, of the KPIs that are traditional in the higher ed service delivery space. I also look at how we're connecting our services with our channel partners in HR and the physical plant and in the advising group, right? Because we're part of that thread of people that provide enterprise services to our stakeholders. So it's not just the, what is IT doing? It's how is IT enabling our partners from the registrar's office to athletics to make sure that we're enabling everyone to be able to accomplish the university's business.
That's great, thank you. This position is going to be responsible for bringing together a more centralized IT organization that is deeply committed to supporting the academic mission of the university with a sharp focus on operational excellence and service. Can you tell us about how your experience in working with faculty, staff, and heads of the various academic and research units on your campus, and how you've been able to engage them in developing plans that effectively improve the quality of the learning environment?
So I'm leading the effort here. We've done this in the academy now for the past 10, 15 years, where we're trying to figure out how to right size IT across the various disciplines. I'm leading the effort here to basically work with deans to figure out what should be in the core of our various of our university, and then what needs to be supported in the disciplines around the university, and how we connect those two to make one information technology group that supports the campus. What I'm doing first is I kind of picked off what I call the B2Bs, the bigger units of how, if you're a large unit in our case, in research support, in healthcare, both people and animals, in residential housing, I've hired IT managers that report into the CIO's office, and they report to me. And we basically set up a structure where they're housed within the units, but they're IT professionals. Their job is to work, if you kind of follow that same faculty appointment kind of distribution, 75% of their efforts is direct work for direct benefit within the unit. 25% is for that common good that kind of lifts the tide for the entire campus. And what we're doing there is one size doesn't fit all. And we've got to figure out for each unit, where's that line? I say 75%, it might be 85% for a particular unit, or it could be 50% for a particular unit. But that is usually borne out in my one-to-one relationship that I have with deans and departments, as we kind of talk through what their needs are versus what's in core and what they're trying to accomplish as a program of distinction as they build upon some of those core services that we all agree on. We've got to have standards to be able to ideate and get ourselves into that innovative space. You just got to assume that data center works well. You got to assume what our learning management system is. You got to assume, these are our standard vendors that we're going to leverage. We can't be in competition necessarily as a campus community with IT fiefdoms. So we try to lower the temperature there, and we try to find that respect quotient for what needs to be done and whose core competency it is.
Well, I have one more question for you, and then we're going to open it up to the Q&A, where we do have several starting to come in. I'm going to just remind people to submit your questions there, and I'll take care of reading those for you, Fred, so you don't need to worry about trying to get through those yourself.
Okay.
But my final question to you is that this position will play a critical role ensuring the success of enterprise-wide projects, including the implementation of a new enterprise resource planning system. You've already talked about your experience implementing and upgrading and supporting those systems, but the real question is how you work with the campus community to define what is enterprise-wide and how to ensure that their needs are being met before, during, and after the implementation has been completed.
Well, you got to be transparent, you got to listen, and you got to engage. You've got to also make sure that so what we typically do in higher ed is we buy software, and then we immediately do not like it, and we start looking for ways to modify it. You've got to have some guiding principles or a shared understanding around, this is what we customized, this is what we bought, these are the differences. And you need a group of people, not IT, that is going to help you with those policy decisions. We can help run the systems, but you're going to be the one that's going to use it. And we got to be really clear on that, because I really don't use systems as much, other than making sure that well, I pay tuition there, but for the most part, we're looking for our partners to help define the way that they want to interact with our enterprise systems. You've got to have that open dialogue so that you can really understand. A lot of people go into this saying that we're going to go to baseline. baseline breaks a lot of things, and we got to have some really serious conversations about what does that mean and what's going to be your business continuity plan as we begin to unfurl some of those customizations and move to a tenant environment. Because remember, we're buying into, in this case, you're buying Workday. You're moving into a tenancy, so you don't get to kind of define the rules of the road. You're a tenant in a building at that point. You can maybe change the paint in your apartment, but the apartment building belongs to the tenancy. And so we've got to get to a point where we can recognize change management, and we can adopt what it is that we've just purchased. It's a big lift. It really is. And it's one that requires everybody to kind of lean in and realize that we're going to kind of do this thing while we get there. You almost have to go backwards a step to get forward when you're doing an ERP uplift.
Well, thank you. Like I said, that was my last question for you. So what we're going to start doing is just going through the Q&A, and we're going to take the top upvoted questions. So they'll just be in the order that we see them there. So the first one actually takes advantage of some terminology used earlier. You were mentioning the fact that you were geeking out earlier. So what they wanted to understand is what emerging technologies you foresee UCF having the best opportunity to take advantage of.
I would think it would certainly be around the VR space. As you look at some of the cool things that we're doing with virtual reality in the healthcare space. I mean, you can really through simulations, and you guys are obviously one of the tops in simulations. Wouldn't it be cool if you were producing graduates who actually had hundreds of hours of simulated experience using VR? We're also looking at that, for experiential learning. I mean, can you imagine kind of basically, well, in the COVID-19 world, you can I really roam the world in a virtual space? It's just endless, the opportunities. And of course, looking at machine language learning and artificial intelligence, that's going to give us some instant feedback about some of the initiatives that we're doing. You don't have to necessarily have a subject matter expert crunching through the numbers. You can use like Thoughttonomy or some of these other things to kind of build out some processes and get instant feedback about whether or not you're trending in the right direction. I think it's an exciting time to think differently. But also as I think about some of the automation and the machine language and AI and VR, how do you train our folks to be able to use that and know what it means? That's also the cool part of what we're doing in I think in IT transformation, is that we all get to be better. We all get to use different tools and skill up. I think it's a fun time to be in IT.
I think we're all going to have plenty of opportunity to skill up here with the new ERP system. So whether we're doing VR and AI at the same time is just an added bonus. What security challenges do you foresee higher education facing over the next few years?
Well, I mean, that is so let's kind of look at where we are in our maturation process. We are by definition an industry that is in the information sharing business. So that's kind of who we are. That's what we believe in. We believe in getting information and then disseminating as much as we can. So how do you build out our space such that we have, and I kind of put these in two dimensions, where you have kind of the back office or system of record space, but you also have over here the innovation space where you're able to share and disseminate information. We're going to have to adopt kind of a user-wide identity management space. What does it mean? What does my role entitle me to, right? And how do I move through that life cycle and get access when and where I need it, but also deprovision when I no longer have that role. We kind of turn people on, but we never actually take any rights or privileges away, and that leaves a door wide open. in the research space, how do we build out compliant research environments such that we can enable our faculty researchers and PIs to be first movers and give them a competitive advantage around building out some domain expertise with respect to research environments that allow us really to have all the controls in place, but not necessarily require the first mover to have to pay their way in. So I think it's boundless. Even as you start looking at going to an ERP from on-prem, that data model that you have to look at, how's it going to be secured? How's it going to be curated? Who has access to it? Because everybody's really trying to get at that data model. That's our intellectual property. That's the thing that we've got to figure out a way to manage, as my friends in advancement say, from birth to bequest. How do we manage that life cycle all along that chain such that we're able to enable but not restrict? That's the balance of risk in the security space. And then, of course, we need to deeply integrate security into the operations so that they're not just like a cop on the beat, but it's part of what we do as we go through our daily life, knowing that there's a security component, a risk component, and security standards that we've all accepted. So.
Yes, and I think that once you start answering questions, sometimes it triggers new ones from different people. So we'll see if we get a couple more on that topic. But the next one actually takes us back to the IT transformation. So they're asking about your particular involvement in the project that you mentioned at Michigan State and some challenges you may have encountered. So, or that maybe you mentioned in your CV is maybe the better way to put it, to consolidate and right-size IT professionals on campus while realigning the function, skills, and developing a campus support. Sorry, things just flipped around, to achieve better delivery of service. So they're referencing some language you may have had in your CV about running into some, maybe not a smooth transition in that, and whether or not you can expound upon that a little bit.
Oh, so this is hard work. It's not, it's never smooth, by the way. So I'm not going to gloss over that, because there's in a decentralized environment, people and culture change is difficult because, you have, in the higher ed space, you have kind of the encampments of decentralized and centralized, and you've got to figure out what is that shared space. And you got to do it in such a way that hopefully you don't have that. Let me back up a step. There's a couple different ways this can be done. There's the executive fiat, where the president and the board kind of say thou shalt, and you move everybody, and then you have all the hurt feelings that you have to kind of work through, but you haven't really done the examination of where is services really being provided from, and whose core competency is it. What I'm doing in this particular iteration is really working with each of the departments to figure out, okay, here's the core competency of the central IT organization. This is what we've been empowered to do. We all agree that we're going to leverage these common good services. Now, what is the core competency of the particular unit, and how do we make sure that we staff that group such that they're still able to meet the missions and goals of that unit? But it's a one size does not fit all. It's a conversation that you must engage in an honest way, and in a listening way, and in an engaging way with each unit to kind of get through it. And I'm about 5 units in, and there's 19 to go. But I've kind of worked on the biggest units first.
Well, the next question actually kind of dives into that same concept a little bit further. I'll read you the question, but it is based upon your previous research, your previous experience at an R1 institution. What's your philosophy regarding IT supporting research? Did you see centralized T as playing a role, or would you dedicate IT staff and resources specifically to those researchers? Which is slightly what you were just talking about, but I thought maybe you'd want to give us a specific example on how you might have addressed that.
So what we're doing here, and that's a good question, because so first of all, I don't believe that everything should be centralized. That's kind of a core belief, and it just doesn't work. There's a point at which IT is no longer effective when you get closer out to the edge unit, especially around innovation, especially around things like research. So I'm heading up our research, cyber infrastructure research group, and I'm wading into this, not trying to take it over, because we have a high performance computing cluster group, and they take care of our researchers who are really in that 7-figure space. They do a great job of taking care of those researchers, but when you have 7 figures, you're usually taken care of well anyway, right? So it's the rest of the group. What I'm trying to stand up is like a research service catalog. We're building a science DMZ. So that a way we can kind of bring some of the hardware and infrastructure into our secure data center. That doesn't mean that the researcher loses access or the research support people lose access to that equipment. It just means that we've taken care of one of those controls, right? How is the research environment secured? So that's kind of step one. Step two is I am kind of building out a research support group where those folks focus on supporting researchers. And I don't necessarily have them spending time on the administrative or academic, well, some academic, because the academic and research obviously lend themselves to one another. So faculty member in the day is teaching class, and then in the evening is researching. So I try to make a connection there, but I don't have those folks who are research oriented taking care of the ERP, for example. So we created some segmentation there, and I do think there needs to be specialties around supporting our researchers with IT professionals. I do want them using the same tools. I do want them using the same language, same languages, R and the LAC and SPSS, because that allows us to create that research bench. Because as faculty members come and go, if we have a deeper research bench, we're actually able to help them in that pre-award phase get spun up faster. And we think that gives them a competitive advantage.
Thank you. UCF is beginning to build a centralized digital accessibility program. Can you talk about your experience with digital accessibility and how you might see this program tying into your role as the CIO?
Accessibility has been one of those things that is, a lot of higher eds kind of pay lip service. And I was just with the accessibility group, steering group, I guess it was last week. And, one of the things I realized after going through that discussion with them, COVID-19 has exposed that the folks who need assistance are actually further away than we thought now in this new environment. So accessibility is, it can't be lip service. We almost have to, just like we're kind of shifting some resources from administrative IT to academic IT, there's a fine point that we need to add to accessibility. A lot of the vendors will kind of say, yeah, we're there, but they're not really. So I think we're going to have to help fill that gap with making sure that we are committed to accessibility, and we're putting our money where the talk is to make sure that we can help those folks who aren't, for whatever reason, it's like they don't have a lobby or something, and they don't necessarily get in the lane where we can really say that we're doing all that we can to close that gap. So yes, I do think it's part of the IT portfolio. I think it's something that we've got to take seriously, and I think we've got to put resources there to close that gap, because it's widening. Actually, it's not getting closer; it's widening.
That's great. We've got a little bit of an empty zone in our Q&A, so I'm going to draw back to a couple questions that I have prepared just in case. One of them is to ask you to tell us about a situation where you've had to transform the culture of your organization. So how do you engage those key stakeholders and inspire them to take ownership of the process and the outcomes?
So it's interesting. I'm in that age group where where you went from kind of IT as a backroom heads down to IT as a kind of a part of the culture. So that's been a part of my job for the last 12 to 20 years is how do you change the culture? And obviously in my role, it's IT. How do you enable us and from a cultural standpoint to become part of the campus community? By and large, we spend a lot of time in the back office. So one of the things that I'm working on from a culture perspective is how do we get ourselves involved in campus community activities? So just like in faculty reporting for our IT staff, I encourage them as part of their annual evaluation to lean in and be part of campus community activities. There's a service component to the IT staff that report to me. What are you doing to advance the culture of campus? Pick whichever one you want. There's 100 committees. You pick something that you'd like to dedicate your time to, and I give you the release time so that you can go and participate. And you bring your own perspective. It's not as part of big IT that you're doing that. It's part of being a campus citizen. Because as the longer I do this job, the more I realize in order for us to be effective, I just can't be the IT guy. I need to be a leader on campus. And so I try to make sure that permeates down through the IT staff as well.
Thank you. Question, what do you see as the key success factors for the PeopleSoft implementation project that your institution had just launched?
For us, trying to undo, well, there's several, but one, trying to work our way out of some of those customizations. So we had customizations on top of customizations, trying to get ourselves back to a point that we could be not necessarily best of breed and unique, but more commoditized. That's huge because we're a really large campus and we're used to kind of having decentralized decision making. So how do you kind of pull all that back to the center once the genie's already out of the bottle? It's easier if you're not as customized or decentralized, but once it's out, you've got to kind of work your way back to zero before you can start going forward. So that's where we are. How do we get good at testing? That's a huge deliverable for us because a lot of when you're customized and you run a stack for a lot of years, you kind of lose that edge. You no longer really understand the business logic that goes into the system. You just kind of operate the system because the day's Thursday, so you run the Thursday report. And we need to kind of do some relearning there. I'd say the other thing is how do we get used to what our space is going to be with respect to private cloud versus public cloud, on-prem versus cloud, build versus buy. We've got to revisit that for just about every decision that we make going forward because we have to think about it differently. If we're truly going to go from that on-prem environment to some sort of hybrid, because you're always going to have stuff still running on campus, but now we're decidedly going to stick one leg out into the domain space. What does that mean? So there are several things. The last thing I'd say is how do we change the staff, right? So we have literally have a lifetime of SMEs who know how to use our system that was in place for 25 years. They know how to run that particular system. How do you now kind of recast everyone's role and become a SME in the next iteration? Those are big organizational change management shifts. So one more thing that I'd add, I was just talking to the registrar the other day, and how do they change their staff, right? Because they're kind of traditionally used to kind of the walk-up person kind of coming in, and they have the window there, and they kind of take care of them that way. Now it's going to be pretty much workflow delivered to you, What does that mean? How are you going to analytically take care of those queries? So big changes.
Well, the next question we have is, I'm going to reframe it just a little bit, but it's based on what you've learned about UCF so far. Have you already seen places where there's opportunities for improvements or advancement that look interesting to you as an opportunity once you arrive on campus, if you were the selected candidate?
Yeah, there's several as I'm just kind of ticking through in no particular order, so don't hold me to it on prioritization. But do you leverage the expertise that you have with faculty that are there? I see a lot of campuses over the years where they just kind of go out and hire the Accentures, the Hurons, the Gartners. It's like, well, the faculty member sitting right over there who you pay a lot of money to be our expert, bring them in, leverage that. I see an opportunity for, how are enterprise decisions made? I'm a big believer in kind of building and socializing. Okay, these are the inputs that we're going to discuss and agree upon to make these enterprise decisions, so we don't try to pretend that we're going to do 10 number ones. Well, you're not going to do 10 number ones. You've got to come up with a prioritization if you're going to get anything done, or else you're going to do a piece of 10 things as opposed to completing one thing. So how's the decision making work? Engagement. I'm more of a I'm not a behind the desk IT leader. I'm kind of out there moving around, so I'm almost never sitting down behind the desk. I like to go and engage people where they are. I find that I get the best direct feedback there, and I think it lowers the kind of the standoff persona that I think people have about IT. So there are three things right off the bat. I have this thing that I call the transfer portal. That's where you look at giving people that are already on the payroll and in roles an opportunity to do different jobs that we need as we ideate and change our platforms. You just can't necessarily run out and just start hiring a bunch of people when you have a group of people already here. We are in the higher education business. How do you transform those folks and get them over to reskill them and get them to a different second, third, or fourth career, depending upon where we are in our life cycle. So those are just a couple of things off the top of my head. I would also look at. I'm really excited about what I'll call the Silicon Valley of the Sun Belt that I think you're kind of positioned to be. You look at all the people that are moving into the space. You look at all of the businesses that are around there. You're positioned to be the employer's choice for where you go for talent. How do you talk about that? And while I'm saying that, just remind me one other thing. The communications piece. I mean, you really could use a new communication mechanism, because I have a kid that goes there and I didn't know half the stuff that you guys are engaged in, and some really cool things. And it's like, okay, well, how come I don't know that? I mean, who's going to tell me that stuff? So just telling your story better is something that I think is really huge. It's all there, but you do have to tell it.
Well, Fred, I wanted to say thank you very much. We did run into our updated hard time for our ending today, so thank you. And remind everybody who's participating in the forum today that you'll be receiving an opportunity for feedback, and to please submit that through the ucf.edu/leadership page under the Vice President for Information Technology and CIO page. So Fred, once again, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I appreciate it. And thank you to all of those who participated today.
Thanks everyone for your time. I appreciate you coming to see me today. Appreciate it. Thank you.